first question, I've been talking a while about the status of the lawsuit. The judge seemed like they were splitting the difference a little bit, upholding the governor's executive orders and stay at home, although she did kind of smack her down a little bit, it seemed. And I was just curious your thoughts on the judge's order.
Well, there were three questions before the Court of Claims. The first was whether or not we had reason to file suit. Number two was whether or not the governor violated the 1976 law. And the third was whether or not the governor violated the 1945 law. The judge went our way on two of those three questions, and we appealed to the Supreme Court, a bypass of the Court of Appeals. And the governor's response actually did a cross appeal. So the governor actually believes as well that this should go directly to the Michigan Supreme Court. So I think we had a fair trial. I believe we received our fair day in court. I do disagree, obviously, with the decision that was made in the Court of Claims, and that's why we're going to the Michigan Supreme Court. And again, it's important to note the question is not on the policy of the governor's executive orders or her intentions or whether or not she's taking this seriously enough. The question is whether this governor or any future governor can not just declare a state of emergency, but carry it on indefinitely as long as he or she may decide and render the legislature completely meaningless. I think we have three co-equal branches of government, and that rule of law still needs to be followed even while we're in a pandemic. And that's the question right now. And I am hopeful to hear from the Supreme Court this week on whether or not they will hear it immediately.
That's what I was going to ask, if you knew or not yet, and you answered the question when we were going to hear arguments on that. Okay, next question about the opening. It seems like we're starting to really get the gears moving now as far as opening. I know the timing, as we've established, is not what you have wanted. That aside, what do you think about the stages that we're getting right now for getting business reopening in Michigan right now?
Well, first off, people in northern Michigan were excited to get back to some sense of normalcy. And these restaurant owners, these business owners, were happy that they finally had a sense of clarity from this administration. They were given standards that needed to be hit, and they were very happy to meet those standards. Again, I think Michigan can open safely, and we can prioritize public health. We can follow the data and listen to the health experts and open safely. There's ways to do it, and other states have proven that. Michigan has not yet. So I was very excited to see the progress over the last couple of weekends, and I'm excited for the entire state to finally be given the chance to open safely. It's a little later than what we were hoping for here in the House, but it's a step in the right direction. It's something we're excited about.
Okay, I spoke to Representative Heisinger yesterday about two things, CARES Act and unemployment. Do you share his concerns first about unemployment with the governor seemingly moving state employees, as he says, to the head of the line before other workers in the state to get unemployment benefits?
I certainly don't believe any government officials should be given any type of special treatment as compared to the regular people, hardworking people of our state who have been displaced and who are being told that they can't work a job even when it can be done safely. Everyone should be treated fairly and equally under the law. So that's my commitment and that's my goal as it pertains to the unemployment system, which I think the state of Michigan has completely mishandled since day one. When you look across the country, and those families who've had their livelihoods taken away, those that are being told that they can't work a job and take care of their loved ones, government is creating that problem. So government therefore needs to help fix it. And in the state of Michigan, state government has not been there to help people. I think it's been mishandled, and the people of our state deserve a lot better. And that's why we created our oversight committee, to ensure that we're holding government to a higher standard. And we're ensuring that these people across our state who are hurting, in my opinion, unnecessarily right now, receive the benefits that they were promised, and they get the help that quite frankly, they deserve.
Okay, I want to talk to you about the protests and frankly the riots that we've been seeing for more than a week now. Grand Rapids saw a night it hasn't seen since the '60 race riots. Kalamazoo just rioted. Detroit has obviously had all sorts of problems. People are calling for calm. And what I wanted to ask you, the president was just in town recently. He was just in the state. And in the last several days, he has said when the looting starts, the shooting starts. He talks about dominating the streets. He's talking about sending in the United States military without the governor's position. And 2 days ago, the Park Police tear gassed peaceful protesters outside of a church. Clergy were tear gassed, and was done for a photo op. Is the president calming the situation right now?
First, let me say that I think what happened to George Floyd was terrible. And any American who saw that should be upset. He was created in the image of God, and he had rights. And quite frankly, by me watching that video, I believe he was murdered, and that officer needs to be held accountable. And that was the original injustice that led to the protests. And there's nothing more American than protesting and voicing your displeasure in action that government has taken. And I encourage people to protest, and I think, quite frankly, it's appropriate. But I think that there is a right way to do it. And I think while we're protesting, it needs to be done in a safe manner. People still need to have a regard for the law. People still need to have a regard for private property. And I think the rule of law still needs to be enforced. So there's a
I don't.
reason to protest, but
I
it
don't
needs to be done in the right way. And I think the
the I'm
president
not.
is in a
I'm not. I'm sorry. You were about to say. I'll let you finish that.
I think the president is in a tough spot because he is the commander in chief. And it is his responsibility to ensure the law is enforced across the country in a fair and responsible way.
I don't think anyone
And
disagrees with that, Mr. Speaker, but looting starts, shooting starts. We will dominate the streets with the U.S. military, whether governors like it or not, and tear gassing peaceful protesters at a church. Is that calming the situation?
I think the president is in a tough spot and he needs to do all he can to ensure that our laws are enforced. That is his responsibility. I believe the statement in which you are referencing on the looting and the shooting was more of a statement of fact of this is what has happened in the past, and we don't want to see that. Nobody wants to see peaceful protesters tear gas. No one wants to see any of that happen.
But
But the fact is,
that's
when you,
exactly what just happened outside of St. John's Episcopal Church on Monday, and it was
I
at the
think the
direction of the
vast
White House.
I think the vast majority of people who are protesting around our country are doing so in a safe and responsible way. Yet there are some who have no regard for the rule of law. There are some who have no regard for private property, and it's casting a, a
You there?
I apologize
Oh,
about
it's
that.
okay. That's
Sorry,
okay.
I'm back.
I'll let you finish that question or finish that answer.
And I think it's casting a shadow over everyone who's protesting and an unfair blanket and a broad brush. So
Okay.
we can protest the right way. And I hope to see people do that around the country. And I think everyone's in the same boat here, Nick. We all want to see these protests happen in a safe and responsible way. That's
And
our goal, not the looting.
I appreciate that, and I don't think anyone disagrees with me. But to be fair, I think you're avoiding my question because the people outside of St. John's Church were protesting the right way, the exact way that you say you want them to protest, and they got tear gassed. Clergy got tear gassed, and it doesn't sound like you have any criticism at all whatsoever for the president or the attorney general or the White House because of this.
I think that there is unfair criticism of the president right now because we are in an election year. That'll be very clear when I say that. The fact is, from day one, sometimes this upsets Republicans, sometimes it's upsets Democrats. I think, and I want the governor to be successful, and I want the president to be successful. Both of them right now are in a tough spot. However, the governor of our state, Governor Whitmer, is the chief executive of our state. President Trump is the chief executive of our country, and his responsibility is to ensure the laws are enforced and the rule of law is upheld. We
Okay,
want to see peaceful
I'm still
protests.
curious what laws were being broken outside of St. John's Church.
I will admit to you, I have not seen that video. I have simply seen other people say that there were peaceful protesters who were tear gassed. I know the president went to the church. I know he spoke at the church. I know he spoke in the Rose Garden. It is not something that I have done a deep dive into.
Okay.
Nobody wants to see peaceful protesters tear gas. Nobody wants to see peaceful protesters stopped from exercising their constitutional rights. What I can tell you is there's a right way to protest and there's a wrong way. We're seeing both right now in our country, and this should be a time for healing, and this should be a time to focus rather than the looting and the disregard for private property. This should be a time to focus on the original injustice that occurred in Minneapolis and the change that is needed. That should be our focus right now.
Last question, and I'll let you get out. You talked about it is the president's responsibility to make sure laws are enforced. Representative Huizenga did not agree with the president offering up or saying that he would send in the United States military over a governor's objection. Do you agree with the representative on that, or do you think the president would be within his rights to send in the U.S. military to the state of Michigan over Governor Whitmer's objections if he had?
Well, I do believe in federalism, that power is divided between the states and federal government. And I have had conversations with the White House about that, and I'll keep those conversations confidential at this point. But I do believe the laws need to be enforced. I think fundamentally, each governor should have the responsibility of ensuring that their laws are followed. But again, the president is still the commander in chief of 50 states. And the president has a tough job, and he needs to make sure that our laws are being upheld. So I've had conversations with him about that, and I hope the right thing is done.